Hey guys, it's Mystical Storms here with a new podfic. This will be a multiple video series because it has 22 chapters and I don't think I can read over 100,000 words in one sitting because that would be long as hell. But yeah, just a quick warning for those who do not cannot listen to anything with implied and reference suicide attempts, and that kind of stuff, underage drinking, drug dealing, torture, those kind of things. Please do not listen to this and go check out my other videos since this will not be for you. I have other videos that are fluff or more like hurt comfort, but please don't watch this if this is just things that you cannot deal with, I guess. I don't know how to say it properly, but if this is something not for you, please go to my other videos and I will understand. Mental health comes first, and fics like this are not always great for mental health. Anyway, this is a 22 chapter fic, and it's called He Tried by Hiyamatsu. I hope I probably butchered that, but yeah, I think they have other works in this series, so if I really like this one and people also like it, I might also do the other parts after I read this one. I will try posting as regular as possible because I know sometimes waiting long for a new episode of a podfic can be long and very nerve-wracking because you just can't wait, and I get that. That's why sometimes I wait for them to finish, sometimes I just keep listening to them every time they come out, especially now that I'm listen to most podfics on YouTube. I just try to listen to them every time they come out. But yeah, so I'll put all the warnings inside the description and also the notes from the author and the link obviously of the fic, so please go kudo the artist if you like it, and let's get started. And again, this is He Tried by Hiyamatsu. Chapter 1. Introduction of Izuku's Sandwich. It was perhaps a bit silly how Izuku came to be in a situation like this, bound by a pro hero's capture weapon and hanging a few meters in the air in a random alley. Cursed to have a bad time every time he went out. But then again, it was either that or throwing himself into traffic, hoping that no one would stand around long enough for his quirk to kick in. He wasn't sure how people would respond to him coming back from the dead. It hadn't gone well each time that happened. "What are you doing stealing, kid?" The hero Eraserhead tightened the cloth around him. Izuku winced. It wasn't pleasant to be hanging upside down, blood rushing to his brain while his lungs felt like they were being squeezed together. He was fairly certain that a tug he pissed off earlier managed to crack one of his ribs if the weird shifting and pain under his skin was anything to go by. It's not like he was actually stealing anything, so this response was a bit unjustified. To be short and frank, he was just trying to get a sandwich after pulling an all-nighter. Simple as that, no ulterior motive or anything. He even paid for it. This was something a lot as he didn't have much money nowadays. But he didn't want to steal when he didn't need it, and yet here he was. Though it wasn't like he was truly innocent here. He didn't steal, but he for sure caused a minor traffic accident, one that may or may not have almost killed, one that he may or may not have almost died in. Evaded questioning and kicked another villain to rush away straight into Eraserhead's clutch. But then again, he didn't deliberately disturb the peas. He was just running away from the tug who decided that he wanted revenge for something Izuku was sure he didn't do. It wasn't like he remembered every guy he pissed off. He did though. He absolutely did. It was bad to forget people who were mad at you, where you were just a scrawny kid with nothing to your name. On the other hand, he didn't know he was going to get out of. He didn't know how he was going to get out of the situation. It wasn't planned. He didn't have his trusty knife on him either. He was alone, and then nearing police sirens did nothing to ease his nerves and let him think about how he got into this, how to get out of this. It would be quite ridiculous to go down so easily. Oh yeah, Eraserhead, getting those nutrients inside of me and whatnot. He flashes a smile to the hero, although he doubt the hero could see it under his mask that miraculously stayed on during this whole thing. He would thank whoever was looking after him, at least for this one. I wasn't sure Eraserhead could figure out who he was just by his face, especially when his hair was dyed, fading contacts in his eyes. If Tsukashi hadn't, Eraserhead would be less likely to do so. He wasn't stupid enough to partake in crime when a hero could so easily spot him. And the next thing he knew, he'd have Tsukashi knocking on his door. Especially if he was getting spotted by an underground hero who was notorious for getting kids off the street. Izuku wasn't sure what happened to them, but he didn't want to find out. He doubted he would be able to continue his vigilantism/villain work that way. So, you're just saying that you were at the store just to steal some food, kid? Eraserhead narrowed his eyes at him, eyes flashing red. Izuku felt the ache in his body flare up. Slight panic rose up his chest, reminding him how it had hurt before his quirk had come in. I actually paid for my sandwich, Eraser. Don't sell me so low now, would you? Don't sell me so low now, would you? He wiggles in the vines. The chance of him getting away was starting to be slim the longer he dangled. He kind of regretted flipping off Dobby a few hours earlier to hang out. Surprisingly, barely an adult with pyromania was a good getaway, even if the smell of burnt flesh was too strong for his taste. So, all the other things you've done are totally not you, kid, and you're innocent like any other middle school kid I've come across. Eraserhead leaned against the alley wall, staring up at him. Izuku raised his eyebrow. He didn't like that he knew he was still in middle school. Not that he attended it much, though. He kept his grade just enough not to be thrown out. And what would be those things, Eraser? Because let me tell you about the warehouse fire yesterday. Totally not me. Technically, he was the one to instigate setting the place on fire, but hey, he didn't have the fire quirk that did it. Dobby was all too eager to do it for him. Warehouse fire? Aizawa raised his eyebrow, and Izuku swore he sometimes should keep his mouth shut. Language, kid. He clutched his capture weapon. He clutched his capture clod and started letting him down, but before he could reach the ground, he stopped. Izuku pouted. He wiggled some more and gasped as a sandwich that he had put in his pocket when a tug tried to catch him off guard fell to the floor. At least it was still wrapped. He felt his quirk come back. Was Eraserhead now not counting him as a threat? Not gonna let me down? How mean of you. Izuku saw the man's eye twitch and smiled to himself. Let letting go of a kid who caused trouble every other night, yeah, right. Eraserhead let out a small snort, adjusting his binds, halting Izuku from his wiggling. Did the hero notice what he was doing? I'll let you know, the last 5 budding cases of drug dealing were disputed by yours truly, so you should at least give me some credit. I'm not that bad, you know, Izuku smiled. Yeah, that's what he did. Trying to be a hero while hanging out with some shady dudes who couldn't care less about other people. Thrown between the title of villain and vigilante by the police. He wasn't sure which one fit, but he was surely not a hero. He couldn't be one. Not like this. As a citizen, I have to thank you, but as a hero, I should report you to police right this instant. Eraserhead sighed, and Izuku knew he was right though. He couldn't quite understand the man. Then why haven't you? Izuku wiggled some more. He felt the part over his wrist come loose. Good. He should keep talking. You're an interesting kid, and definitely know what you're doing in some ways, but that doesn't mean you can keep doing that. One day you'll get killed. Izuku burst out in laughter, startling the hero. I'm sorry, He tried to stop cackling, but damn it, it was so funny. Him dying, he hadn't heard a funnier joke ever. He heard that many times, by thugs who thought they could take him down, and by people who kind of cared for him. And he had died as well, not as Izuku, but as a villain, as Yami. Hearing that he could get killed was so amusing. He knew that he's seen people die because they made one wrong move. Heck, Izuku made that wrong move, but for him, it only meant 2 more hours to his non-existent sleep schedule. What the hell, kid? Eraserhead stared at him as Izuku kept laughing, tears almost springing in his eyes. Sorry, but that was a good joke, Eraser. I didn't know you cared. Izuku tried not to giggle, but his voice betrayed him. Eraserhead hardened his gaze instead of something he said, and Izuku kept his giggle at bay. You're a kid, why shouldn't I care? He said instead. Izuku bit his lip. Yeah, right. Oh, I didn't know because I'm a villain. You totally don't care when a person is over 18 and pickpocketing someone. Me, I'm them some pretty fucked up shit, but you wanna help me? Pretty hypocritical of you, don't you think? He grunts out. It was stupid, but it was unfair how society was constructed. He was the only one running around trying to do some good because society wronged people that thought of them as lesser. But since he was a kid, suddenly it meant he had a second chance of redemption. What the fuck? Instead of acknowledging his outburst, Eraserhead clicked his tongue. What's your name? Why, do you want to know? Izuku met the hero's gaze and sighed. Fine. He wanted to do this that way. It's Akatani, but not like you'd be able to find me in a database anyway. He wiggled away. If he had a proper distraction, he would maybe slip away. Damn it, Dobby, where was he? Because it's a fake name and you're trying to pull my nose? Izuku smiled, shaking his head, catching a glint of something blue. Ah, finally. No, he leaned back, trying to straighten himself in the capture weapon. Because I'm dead. He laughed as blue flame separated them, and at the moment it died down, Izuku was running down another alley as far as he could from the hero, clutching his singed arm. His feet hit the pavement until a second pair of shoes joined him. He sprang to the side, heart catching in his throat, thinking it was the hero, but Dobby's blue flames appeared in his vision instead. Your aim is shit, he said as Dobby pulled him up to a window he couldn't quite reach and led him away from the scene. Yeah, well, stop trying to rattle Eraserhead every time you meet him. But it's so much fun. You have a problem, Dabi whispers. Izuku laughed, reaching into his pocket and ignoring the burning in his arm. It would heal anyway. No use trying to keep the infection away and waste medical products. Wait, he checked his other pocket. It wasn't there. My sandwich! Izuku groaned, remembering how it fell on the ground. Fuck him. Chapter 2. The Understanding of Broken. Aizawa sighed, dropping a package full of paper along with a paper cup of coffee. Last night's report and all the lowlifes he'd knocked down, staring back at him, mocking his dry eyes. It was a tedious task he was not looking forward to. He'd rather go home and curl up in his bed with Hisashi and hope the demon spawn of a cat didn't wake them up for a few more hours. As rare of an occurrence as it was, Aizawa would be glad to have a few minutes of peace curled up in his bed with his husband. Tough night. Tsukashi only slightly looked up from his own stack. Firstly, 10 spreads of paper on a property damage because of a store owner thought it was a great idea to hold all of his most valuable items outside the store and right in the path of a chase. Albeit no one could have predicted that said chase, and yet how did the owner come with the fucking idea? Aizawa had no idea. Who the fuck puts all the valuables on display when they can be easily knocked over? They lived in a world where every guy can have a stupid string quirk and accidentally knock something over. I met the kid. He dragged the coffee cup and he looked with him. He took with him and took a large sip. Aizawa hadn't slept for the past 36 hours, and he's regretting his life choices. For his morning paper grading, to his evening patrol that stretched into the night, then into the morning as a kid, a local troublemaker decides to make an appearance. Although, from what he gathered, the kid didn't mean to cause any trouble, but he still did, so Aizawa was pissed. Not at the kid. No, he could never. The kid did get on his nerves, but he was more entertaining than anything. The rest of the people, though, only they better not cross his path, or they would pay. Never the kid, though. Never him. Yami. Aizawa took another sip, nodding along. Yami was one of the most famous vigilante in Mustafu, especially in the police station, giving more paperwork than anyone, more than the kid should. The little guy will give me a migraine that will last for a life. A problem kid? That's a problem kid. That's who he is. Tsukashi grinned as Aizawa snorted. Yami was truly troublesome and worrisome. He leaned in his chair, looking at the stack of papers in front of him, and grimaced. He entertained the idea of not doing anything right now and letting Tsukashi deal with the paperwork. Yeah, that's an idea seemed way too appealing in his book. But the gracious heart of a hero and had him rubbing his forehead, taking a hold of the first paper off the stack. He definitely is one, he mumbled, grabbing a pen, setting down his cup. Better get over it and then go home. The door opening and closing as a small gust of wind meets Aizawa's back. Had him groaning. He hated how stuffed the police stations were, especially in the morning, as more people came in and the city started moving. The quietness of the station disappeared soon after. So, what happened? Tsukashi dropped his own pen, deciding not to work as Aizawa stated. As Aizawa started, he tapped his finger on the desk, leaning back. Aizawa felt his eyes switch with a small smirk that bloomed on the man's face. Good. He hated police officers. God, he hated police officers. Do you want a formal report, or? Tsukashi shook his head. Telling how you failed to capture him is utterly fine, Eraserhead. No need tarnish your golden reputation. Aizawa snorted. Yeah, sure, he definitely broke his own protocol tonight, but that was only because he wanted to get some information out of the boy. Perhaps he could achieve during a proper interrogation, but something prompted him to do it beforehand in a normal informal setting to speak. Aizawa knew it was very unprofessional, but it was rare he came upon the children like him. But it was rare he came upon children like him. One that was very crazy enough to do stuff the kid did. Ones that were crazy enough to do the stuff the kid did on almost a daily basis, alarmed his bells and had gone off every time he heard whispers of the problem child running rampant. He's a smartass, Aizawa sighed, dropping his work. He knew it would not go on if they kept talking about the problem child. He was classified as weird in Aizawa's book. He has dealt with smartass kids before. They were all the same. Some just play stupid, but some, like the kid, some had some weight to their words. It's not like the kid was spewing anything revolutionary that he never heard before, but the way he held himself, the way he talked, was just worrying to Aizawa. He talked like he had gone through shit to be where he was, and that bothered the hero. He wanted to help, but he wasn't sure how. After all, the kid was still a criminal, and still a wanted villain for many robberies, arson, and many other little things that added up. Even if he did good, there was still bad things. Good and bad fighting inside of him, keeping him just on the line. Tell me something I don't know. Kashi sighed, and Aizawa smirked. Be good. His name is Akatani. Kashi stopped and stared at the man. Aizawa smiled, taking a sip of his coffee again. Though, if it's his real name, that's questionable. Aizawa licked his lips as Kashi clicked away on his computer, straightening his chair, no longer lounging back. His face turned as his eyes jumped all over the screen. There are 3 Akatanis in all of Japan, from the age of 10 to 15. Although only one of them in our area, age 13, birthday May 15, though. He paused, glancing at Aizawa inside. The reports say he's dead. Ah, right. That's what the kid Akatani said. Aizawa couldn't figure out what he meant by that. If the report said that he was dead, then he's going running. Then what's he doing running around the street? Or maybe that wasn't even Akatani, but just some random kid taking his name for shits and giggle. Yeah, that's a problem. That's what the problem child told me. Takashi turned the computer, scrolling the database of the kid's finger, pointing at the cause of death. Aizawa tore his eyes away from the screen. Suicide. Nothing unheard of, but still extremely unpleasant to look at. He's been working with kids at UA for the past 7 years, so every time he heard of a kid taking their own life, he felt he had failed them in one way or another. Surely as a hero, he had, because they shouldn't be kids driven by society or those around from drastic measures. He hoped the problem child had just taken the name and hadn't actually faked his death with suicide. What's the kid supposed to look like? Not looking at the screen, he let Takashi list off the appearance side when it matched up. Black hair, red eyes, some freckles, some built. So, the kid's Akatani. Mikumo, Takashi added and shrugged. It's not impossible to fake one's death, especially with suicide, but for a 13-year-old kid, what would have prompted him? Aizawa shook his head, tapping his coffee cup. Nothing is good, that's for sure. He's also quirkless, so there's that. Aizawa shifted in his seat and rubbed his forehead. He really shouldn't be dealing with this with minimal sleep. He knew quirkless suicide stats were bad, but hearing about another death every time just choked him up. Another kid lost to stupid society, another kid who thought they weren't seen or needed in this world. Aizawa despised the way society had shifted from one problematic mindset to another. It's like they forgot there was a mere 200-year-old Quirkless. There were more 200 years ago Quirkless were considered the norm. Aizawa himself, for the lack of a better word, fought Quirkless. Sure, he had a quirk, but it only allowed him to put himself into a position on par with another being. Basically reducing them just raw strength and fighting experience, or as those around them would say, quirkless. It made no sense to him on how he was glorified because he had that quirk gene, no matter what it did. But those who didn't just get pushed to suicide, and no one batted an eye. Gene, no matter what it did, but those who did just get pushed to suicide, and no one batted an eye at that. On the contrary, they encountered it and made. On the contrary, they encouraged it and it made Aizawa sick. Aizawa gripped his cup, staring ahead. If the problem child was really a Katani, he hoped he had people to rely on. If needed, Aizawa would become that person. I have a proposal. Tsukashi tapped his desk with his finger again, drawing Aizawa out of his thoughts. The air was heavy between them. Hit me. You go out and try to befriend me? Aizawa hissed. Oh no. Detective, do I look like I have time to run around after a kid who, by the looks of it, is already dead and doesn't want to be found? Okay. He was contradicting everything he thought of before he had good reasons for that, right? One, he knew he would get attached and would not let go of the problem child. 2, he really didn't have time. 3, he was afraid the kid would backstab him and let Aizawa bear the guilt of failing yet another member of the youth who so blindly trusted him to keep them safe. My security camera reports say that Eraserhead, a hero who doesn't give a shit, who's facing and does not in fact make small talk but immediately notified the police force, spent 10 minutes having a nice conversation with a local vigilante Yami this morning at 5. Tsukashi hummed before Aizawa could open his mouth and argue as why it was a bad idea. It was a bad idea no matter how he looked at it, because kids like him were dangerous to everyone around and to themselves. So tell me, will you do it? Tsukashi leaned with a shit-eating grin on his face because he knew he had won and Aizawa had nothing more than to groan and nod because, yeah, he would. A Katani might be dangerous, but he was still a kid, and no matter what he said, he always got attached way too fast, and the problem child just screaming to adopt him. A red sign on his head and calls for help heard from miles away calling for Aizawa's attention. Detective, if this blows up in my face, I want months worth of coffee on my table. Tsukashi just laughed. Aizawa really hated the police force. If Izuku could dub this as his worst day in school, he wholeheartedly could. But then again, this was just the worst day in the history of his life. Not really. No, really. The sandwich misery that happened just yesterday, no, scratch that. That was nothing but a breeze in the park. He wasn't excited to have another suicide bait on his head, nor was he ready to meet the #1 hero, then try to save a stupid bully from being killed, and then meet Eraserhead for the second time in a little bit over 24 hours. It was too much, even for him. He needed more coffee for this shit that he had the ability to get. He really should investigate in some form of proper coffee machine at home. Store-bought drinks just didn't give the needed kick to deal with the world, or himself for that matter. It shouldn't come to him as a surprise that Kachan was still a little shit, but every time something happens, he was so surprised at his own stupidity that Kachan could be better. He somehow believed that the guy could change, but that was a lost cause every time he opened his mouth and turned against him, a sneer on his lips as he beat down the quirkless kid of the class to assert dominance. You see how stupid it sounded? Not that Izuku could tell Kachan that, because he would rather not have his shit blown up. He may heal, but his notes didn't. He was not willing to rewrite his notes because Kachan slipped and used his quirk on them accidentally. Again. But then the teachers had to call him out again, saying that he wanted to go into UA, the same as Kachan. Not that he didn't want to, but every day that dream just kind of got further away from him. And because he thought he couldn't do it, no. He was sure he could get into Gen Ed pretty easily, but it was just that. Their society was rotten and the hero world even much worse. He didn't want to clamber under hero society like some bug, although the temptation to take down the system from inside seemed so appealing. But then again, he wanted just to live his life and not worry about some shitty hero and whatnot. Anyway, Kachan had made it clear that day too that he just shouldn't stand in his way, though he was sure he was far behind Kachan to even stand beside him. Kachan's brain worked differently from his, and he once again decided to blast his notes. Fun. Kachan, stop, he said, but the boy didn't hear and threw the notes out the window. The first time he'd done that, Izuku gasped, and he knew there was the koi pond. And knowing his luck, it was most definitely landed in the water. Listen here, you nerd. I'm gonna give you some advice. He veers, putting his hand on his shoulder, his quirk activating. Izuku gulped, a searing pain running up his shoulder. Kachan had put his hands just where Dabi accidentally cinched him. Sure, it healed, but scars stay, you know. And they hurt. Hurt so bad, and Izuku felt tears welling up in his eyes. He might heal, but it isn't minus the pain. Not when Kachan was burning his shoulder like nothing. It was pitiful that after all these years, he was still affected by every hit, every burn, despite all the shit he's gone through. Listen closely, Deku. He pulled away his hand, smirking, walking away. Before exiting the class, he turned. If you want to quirk so badly, then take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. And left the classroom. Not the first time he's been suicide baited, and he had some guys put some flowers on his desk as if he had died. Not that they really knew that he had. But somehow today, tears welled in his eyes because, yeah, it hurt. Kachan was his childhood friend, and he was an ass, but he still took his time to hang out with him when they were little. When his mom was alive, their mothers would meet up, and they would be forced to play games on the console together, and it had been fun, somewhat. The first time Kachan told him to jump or hope he didn't come back one day, but there was always a but, and yet he's not sure what that was, if it was worth clinging to that anymore. He rubbed his eyes and sniffled. He was tempted to just go do it right now, prove Kachan right or wrong, whatever it was, but the remainder of his soaked notes moved him to walk out of the class and head down and not up. It would do no good to jump and cause a scene only to come back probably a few days later and be called weak for giving in. Not that he hadn't already. There was a reason he discovered his quirk after all. His notes were thoroughly soaked, and as much as he tried to drain the water up with his jacket, it did so much he would need to rewrite them. He sighed, and he was almost finished with them as well. Taking the longer path home, he wandered around. He should hurry back and blow dry the notes, but Kachan lived too close for them not to cross passes, and he couldn't risk it. Too bad for him that a villain had taken the same path as him and decided that he was a good prey as any. The sludge-like body jumped from behind him, rapidly nearing him. Izuku panicked. He wasn't good with mutant type opponents, especially when they were made of liquid. He hastily dodged the guy, but Sludge just moved at him and changed his course without batting an eye. Sludge wrapped around him, entering his mouth, and oh fuck, that was disgusting. He couldn't breathe. His vision was getting blurry. In any other world, he would be panicking and thinking he would die. But he's here now. He was panicking because the involuntary inability to breathe was frightening, and he'd better not die. He still took it in stride, as well as the 14-year-old boy could, trying to scream with no air in his lungs and clawing the liquid body of the sludge. Yeah, no, he wasn't getting out of this. It was a certain death. A loud thud was heard from his right side. Never fear. Izuku's eyes widened. All might? For I am here. Wind pressure blasted around them, and the sludge was ripped away from him. He was pretty sure his healed ribs cracked once more. Izuku fell down, coughing. The thing was nasty. He could barely breathe, his vision blurry and getting darker. He was going to pass out. Shit. He tried to breathe, but it was hard when there was still some possible liquid in his lungs. He was pretty sure that it would come back to bite him in the ass later. Boy, I'm sorry you got caught up in my villain chase. All Might appeared in front of him as Izuku tried to catch his breath, but yeah, no, it wasn't happening. He stared at the hero in front of him. All Might's face swam in his vision, distorting the number one hero, something Izuku couldn't recognize. Huh? He mumbled before falling to the ground. If that wasn't embarrassing, then he didn't know what was. It could have gone better, but hey, at least he wasn't dead. Dobby could have a field day if he died because some stupid sludge villain was taking the tentacle fetish too seriously. Izuku groaned, feeling a sharp stab in his cheek. Oh yeah, that wasn't pleasant at all. He cracked his eye open and tried to get away. All Might straightened up immediately. Oh, you're awake. Good. He smiled, and Izuku nodding, rubbing his chest. It still burned. I must go now. You were brave, my boy. But duty calls. All Might cheered, showing him a thumbs up. Izuku's world felt like he was gonna crack right then and there. Really? He wasn't going to check up on him, take him to the hospital. Mandatory things he thought heroes did. Write a police report at the scene for investigations. Izuku may be clueless on a lot of things, but this was not it. All Might was pretty much breaking at least several laws and human decency protocols right now. Sure, Izuku wasn't a saint himself, but goddamn, he liked All Might. Or he thought he did. Sting would have a field day with the information Izuku told him, or he could get his head severed for insulting that All Might could be the definition of ineptitude. Wait, he called, getting up, clutching his bag. All Might turned to look at him briefly, and he was prepared to take off. Wait, Izuku called him. Why was he doing that? He wasn't sure, but his legs moved, hands wrapped around the hero's leg. He looked off at him, wind blasting in his face. Oh god. He was higher than most buildings in the city. Oh god, what was he thinking? He was going to fall. He was going to plummet to his death. Oh god. Hey, what are you doing? Get off of me, young man. All Might called gently, pushing his head. Izuku clung harder. If I let go, I'll die, he shouted, wind drowning most of the sound, but the hero stopped inside as he understood just now. Izuku gulped. Was this really All Might, he thought? The best seer out there? The same All Might who greeted everyone with a smile and gave hope? The same All Might who just totally passed up a kid, one who needed to be checked out? And was he really a hero? Izuku didn't have the time to think about it as they landed on the rooftop. Izuku clutched his chest again. God, it really did burn. He would be lucky if he didn't choke back some slug at home. He wasn't keen on drowning because some liquid was left in his lungs. That was irresponsible young man. All Might scolded him. Scolded, says you, Izuku rasped out. As he shouldn't have said that, he looked at the hero who narrowed his eyes. Well, I must go, young man. You can knock on the door. Someone will probably let you in eventually. Izuku laughed. What? Was he serious? All Might startled as his sudden laughter. Oh God, that I hurt the man, but he can stop. Giggles blazing past his lips like people on the metro during rush hour. Are you serious right now? Izuku gasped, a cough fit striking him. Maybe he hit his head and was going crazy because this was not happening. Was he dead? Was this the afterlife mocking him for his wish to be a hero, or one that seemed to be dwindled down each second? Young man? All Might approach him cautiously, though his steps were hesitant. Oh no, I'm fine. Izuku jumped to his legs, unsure when he had collapsed to his knees. His steps wobbled as he stayed upright. He looked at the hero. Can I ask you something? Yeah, man, it might not be the time for questions. You can just leave them on my internet blog. The answers are automated and follow a simple code based on keywords. It's useless to ask anything there. At least, it wouldn't work on my question. Izuku interrupted the hero, who coughed into his hand. Izuku was sure he saw a flash of red, but maybe the light was tricking him. He was slightly about to black out again. Wouldn't be the first time. Young man, All Might started to smoke. All Might started, but smoke went up between them, startling Izuku. What was this? Some kind of an attack? He friendly looked up around, trying to see someone, but to no avail. Looking back at All Might, he gasped, hand brushing to cover his mouth. All Might? Behind the smoke stood a man, tall, frail, and not All Might. What? He whispered. Was this some kind of joke? Was he being pranked? All Might? He dared to ask. Yeah, that's me. Not a pretty sight, I know. He coughed. You know, those dudes at the pool who push their chest out and pretend to be more muscle than they actually are? Yeah, that's kind of what I do. The hero rubbed the back of his neck before coughing again, and yeah, that was most definitely blood. What the heck? I don't understand, Izuku whispered. You don't have to. All Might slide down the wall and pulled his shirt up. Izuku gulped. That was nasty. Villain put a hole inside me and left me with missing organs, decreasing power, and that's all there is now. And that's all there is to it. He pulled his shirt down, hiding the astonishing scar, looking angry about Izuku. So you're a fraud. You can say that, kid. Izuku pressed his lips. Well, this was interesting. He had been so angry at the hero, but the minute he transformed, the anger disappeared. Not because what he did was excusable, not that it was, just so very not okay of him. Even if he had a limited time, he could care for all of the injuries and potential injured civilian around him. He could have proper reported on his attack, and though Izuku wasn't keen on his name making an appearance at a police station report, it still had to happen, technically. What was your question, kid? All Might asked now that he had time. That he had time was implied, although the hero didn't say it out loud. His question, maybe 2 years ago he would have asked if quirkless kids could become heroes, he'd probably be turned down immediately because it was a stupid dream and dangerous. What at that, looking at All Might, now the strongest man in Japan, he could be injured so easily and prove how much danger was out there. 2 years ago, he still would have asked even after seeing this, but now, as he knows that after everything he's been through, he only had one question in mind. How do you feel about not being able to save everyone? Save him. Because All Might wasn't there when he jumped. He jumped again and again, hoping not to get up one day. He was there for him as he said he would be for everyone, but was he worth it? And all the other things he did. If it was just one thing, he would have forgiven the hero. But he had too many chances to pull Izuku out of his misery, but he didn't. And Izuku didn't blame him then because he had no reason to. All Might was busy. Some kids who just discovered his quirk wasn't on the top of his list. He doubted he ever met All Might in his life, if not for a lucky placement, but a part of him still hoped. He didn't blame him, but he was angry. I feel All Might clenched his fist. I feel sorry because it's my duty as a hero to save people, and yet I can't. It frustrates me because for all the power I have, I feel so hopeless sometimes. Izuku nodded. Yeah, he understands that. He knew very well how it was to feel helpless. When you knew somewhere the person you love so much was dying because you're out to make a small mistake. He wasn't stupid, but that anger still swirled inside of him because he just didn't want to accept that he was one of those people who weren't lucky enough to be worth saving by some heroes. I see. He rubbed his eyes. He was about to cry again. He thought Kachan had beaten that out of him. I'm sorry, kid. Sometimes life plays out in certain ways that aren't in our favors. All Might added and called out a small goodbye before transforming and leaping off roofs again. Izuku sighed, and yeah, he knew that. He knew that the world was unfair. He walked up the side of the roof, peering down. Would it take long for him to fall, though? He had a spare uniform on, and he wasn't keen on trying to wash out all the blood. He decided that it was not worth it for now. He tried the door, glad that it was unlocked, and stepped inside. Small mercies. A loud blast started as he looked outside, seeing smoke nearby. A villain fight? He had seen a new hero debut this morning, but didn't have the time to take proper notes. Maybe they will come back now. He rushed down the stairs, hoping he wouldn't be too late. Upon arriving on the scene, he was stunned with a large crowd of people. Heroes not doing anything. What? He peered at people, trying to see what was going on. Another blast tore through the street, and Izuku saw it now. Kachan and the sludge villain. Hadn't All Might captured him? Izuku looked around. The heroes were just standing there, trying to keep the crowd at bay, watching as Kachan was just suffocating on the villain. Wouldn't they do something to help him? Couldn't they see that he couldn't breathe? Izuku cursed, clutching his bag. Fuck him. He ducked under the hero's arm and took off running towards Kachan. Why was he helping him? Heck, he had no idea. This was his bully, who tortured him and made fun of him every day, but this was still Kachan, and no matter how much he hated the guy, he just couldn't watch him die, although that couldn't be said the other way around. He swung his bag, aiming at the villain's face, hoping to hit something solid as the rest of his body was just liquid. It didn't do much, but it hit the villain's eye, who cursed loudly and let go of Kachan enough for Izuku to pull him out. Kachan was smart as he reacted, fast blasting the villain in the face as well, making him tumble away enough for the heroes to fucking move finally and do something. All Might appeared from nowhere, using some air blasts as before and contained the villain. Izuku stared at the sky as the clouds had gathered cleared away. Had the guy just changed the weather? What the actual fuck? Izuku was jostled around by Kachan, who jumped to his feet, coughing briefly, his eyes narrowing at Izuku. What the fuck was that, nerd? He growled out as Hiro swarmed him. That was irresponsible, one screamed right into his face, and not even letting Izuku get up. You almost died. What were you thinking? Another one growled, and Kachan coughed from his side. Well, you weren't doing shit, so... Izuku said, getting up and looked around for his bag, trying to grab it, but the heroes flocked him, telling him that he shouldn't have done it, and that he should have just let the pros handle it, and that All Might arrived and apprehended the villain in mere seconds. Izuku wanted to laugh. All Might could have done it before, but he didn't, and Izuku knew why. He only pressed his lips together and grabbed his bag. Listen, he growled out, meeting the hero's dead arm's eyes. You just stood there and let him suffocate. At least I did something. He broke the gaze, turned around, and walked home. He had enough of this. He passed Kachan, bumping his shoulder harder than intended. Kachan grabbed his arms instead. Watch where you're going, you quirkless shit. He said loud enough for the heroes to hear. Izuku knew it was intentional. Oh, sorry. I was kinda expecting of a thank you for saving your ass, but I guess that's too much to ask for. Izuku gritted out, catching the surprise on Kachan's face, and took off. He tore through the crowd, and he disappeared from the scene. The police were there this time. The medical staff were there this time, but Izuku didn't have the energy to follow through. He staggered into an alleyway and slid down the wall, clutching his head. Shudders passed down his body as he tried to breathe, unsure if it was the burns on his chest from the sludge villain, or talking to Kachan, but he just couldn't breathe. He just couldn't breathe. Or think, for that matter. His gaze grew fuzzy, and all he could feel was that he was not right. His chest burned, his hand trembled, and he really, really wanted to die. His cheeks were soaked with tears. As much as he should have cared, he didn't. 5 minutes later, he was stumbling out on the alleyway, pretending that he hadn't broken down, and he was a-okay. Shudders still wrecked his body, and he swayed on his feet, and he should not be up and going home, but he'd rather not be found by someone. He could continue breaking down at home, where no one would bother him because he lived alone, where he could spend the rest of his night crying to sleep because his mind went overdrive tonight. Maybe he could just go out as Akatani tonight. Should he call Dabi and ask to light something on fire to feel better? Maybe. Or should he just wander the city in hopes of finding something fun to do? A rooftop high enough to end his suffering, perhaps? He didn't feel like doing any vigilantism tonight, though seeing the police or fighting for the goons of the good of Hero Society when he was let down twice today didn't sound so appealing. He pulled out his phone. Dobby it was. It was easier to drown the sorrow inside of his chest when he didn't have to be himself. Oi, Deku. Izuku looked back, his fingers hovering over the call button. Kachan was panting and staring down at him. I didn't need your saving back there, shitty nerd. He rasped out, and Izuku nodded. Right, because you definitely weren't suffocating. What the fuck is up with you? He growled, eyes narrowing. Izuku sighed. What was wrong with him? Shit ton of stuff, but he didn't feel like explaining it to Kachan right now. So he took a few steps, closing the distance between them, and smiled at Kachan. Just took your advice, nothing much. He winked at Kachan and turned around going home. He would call Dobby later. He wasn't sure how hard his heart was hammering. He would do It would do any good talking right. It wouldn't do any good talking right now. He hoped Kashan didn't follow him. He was tempted to run, but the shortness of breath was concerning, so he slowed down instead. Hearing no footsteps behind him, he came to a full stop, running a hand through his head. He laughed meekly. He just wanted to go home. Young man, All Might skittered to a stop in front of him, with his big form. Izuku gaped, looking around. All Might greeted him, coughing and turning into a puff of smoke, his smaller form emerging. If that wasn't traumatizing, Izuku bit his lips. Seriously, could he walk home and now meet people left and right? He was asking just for one thing. Young man, can I apologize? For what? Izuku rasped out. All Might have thrown him a concerned glance, but continued honestly. I have no clue how to say that. I wish to say sorry for putting you into a situation that caused you to jump into danger to save a fellow boy. To what? Izuku tried to piece it together, coming to an understanding that All Might thought he jumped for Kachan because of what he said on the roof. It made sense, but it was not. He didn't dare to correct the hero, so he just nodded, hoping that would be it, and that he could just go. I've also come here to say that your actions inspire me to be better. Young man, you truly are a hero. Izuku snorted. All his breaking down, he could still laugh. Him, a hero, laughable. No offense, All Might, but I'm the furthest thing away from being a hero, but thanks, I guess. Is that all? He sighed. All Might rubbed the back of his head. Was a hero uncomfortable? Actually, I came here to put a proposition. I may have overheard. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He had seen him breaking down, and that was embarrassing. Are you quirkless, young man? Ah, that. Kachan did say it loudly. Izuku pondered whether to stick to what Kachan believed or tell the hero. He chose the latter because, well, the first wasn't true anymore. If Kachan wanted to believe that, then so be it. Actually, I'm not. I'm a late bloomer and whatnot, but I'm not. He paused, chewing his lip. Not quirkless. I see. All Might nodded. Can I ask what your quirk is? He gulped. It's just a minor healing quirk. Minor enough to keep him alive no matter how much he broke himself. The hero nodded, smiling at him briefly. What was he thinking? Izuku looked around. It was getting late. If he wanted to meet Dabi, he would need to get home soon. Young man, my proposition is, he paused, to get my quirk. One that can be passed down wielder by wielder. Izuku sucked in a deep breath. A quirk? What? Was the hero serious? Actually, All Might kept going, explaining the secret of the square and how it would be passed down and why he was giving the chance to Izuku. It was ridiculous. The power was immense. He doubted his quirk. All Might kept going, explaining the secret of his quirk, how it could be passed down, and why he's giving a chance to Izuku. It's ridiculous. The power was immense. He doubted his body could handle it. Okay, sure, he had a healing quirk, but All Might was more than 2 meters tall, entirely buff, and Izuku was a scrawny kid with little muscle on him. That's it. You're joking, right? He broke All Might's rant. Can you be serious right now? He asked, bewilderment. All Might let out a sound. Young man, I assure you I'm 100% serious right now. Then you must be an idiot. Izuku slapped his own cheek. He should shut up. You understand you're giving such power to a random kid just mad because he decided to run and save his classmate. All Might flinched at the hardness and of Izuku's tone, but he didn't care. Do you understand how idiotic it is? And what would the power even do to me? For all I know, I could explode my limbs immediately. Young man, that's why I intend to train you before acquiring this quirk. And what of it? Did you even ask if I wanted to be a hero? Did it occur to you that maybe I just want to live a normal life, work a 9 to 5 job, and marry someone, and have kids without putting myself in danger? That was a lie. He didn't want to do that. And he didn't want to do all that. He just never thought of that. But it's not like All Might knew. He stumbled at his feet. All Might, you're the #1 hero, right? I thought that entitled at least decent intelligence and the logic along with that, but I guess all you have is raw strength. That isn't even your own. Izuku sighed and taking a deep breath. If that's all, I'm heading home. He paused. He passed a stricken hero and stopped briefly. If you're worried, I won't tell anyone about this, but please don't ask me again. I will say no regardless. He whispered the last part and took off into a jog. His chest was burning, heaving in short breaths, but he needed to get away. Izuku stumbled around alley clutching a can of soda. That night was calm. When he had nothing to do or plan, he hadn't called Bobby. He just went out without his disguise, roam around, not as Akatani Mikumo, better known as Yami, but instead as Izuku Midoriya. It let him breathe and not think about anything. He neared a fire escape and pulled himself up. Reaching the top of a building with a slow step, he sat down, sipping his soda. His legs swung over the edge, catching the soft breeze. He could stay here forever. A soft thud behind him startled him. Almost dropped his can of soma into the abyss of the alley. You shouldn't sit so close to the edge, kid. Izuku twisted his head, trying to see who the mystery guy was. And you shouldn't scare someone because they might just slip and fall. Izuku recorded, letting his sarcasm slip through Cloud's movements, letting moonlight shine through. Izuku closed his eyes for a brief moment, and then he noticed that a familiar figure stood in front of him. Shit, he cursed, watching as a capture weapon wrapped around his torso in a familiar movement. He's lucky. His luck was really inside someone's ass. Well, that's the end of this episode. I'm sorry for all the stuttering and repeating. I need to adjust my glasses. I need to wear them, and it's causing issues. Also, there's a few grammar mistakes, and it caused me to have to reread multiple times to make sure I actually read that properly. There's at least minimum 5 that I had to say properly because it wasn't properly written, and some words I didn't know how to say. So I'm sorry. It's probably going to get better over the next few chapters. But yeah, that's it for now. I put these two together because the first one was only like 15 minutes, and I didn't want to make just one video 15 minutes. So now it's an hour long, but that's fine. At least it's not 2 hours long, so it's easy to edit. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys have a good night, day, evening. Make sure to hydrate, and yeah. Anyway, have a wonderful any time of your day, and I love you. Bye.